All right, welcome to the After Town Hall breakout room by ODIN. Today we're talking about governance values and how they might relate to the Cardano Constitution. It is Wednesday, July 10th, 2024, and we're just gathering here after people have collected their town hall check-in credentials. So just to kick things off, I'm going to share my screen. And just as a way of introduction, we've been talking a lot about governance and collaboration kind of methodologies and different patterns in the ODIN space. And we thought it would be useful to have those conversations in the wider community around the Cardano Constitution, as there's a lot of governance things happening this year as we enter Voltaire, and Node 9.0.0 just launched, which is really hard baking a lot of these governance things on chain. And as we move into the constitutional workshops and then eventually the constitutional convention at the end of the year, we thought it'd be really great to just open up some forums where we can discuss some of the underlying values that we would love to see in the Constitution when we get to the final version of that. But as a way of introduction, one of the things that we've been experimenting with is something called S3, which is short for Sociocracy 3.0. And it is really a set of patterns that have been developed to really help people collaborate in a more fair, decentralized, peer level way. And there's a way of conceptualizing the 73 different patterns of S3 and what they call the common sense framework. So I thought today I would just introduce S3 through the common sense framework. So that's what this mini presentation is before we dive into the main topic. But basically, the goals of these patterns are to create an organization where both the people and organization thrive. And really, it's focused on value, it's productive, it's adaptive, resilient, and reciprocal. And the common sense framework really breaks things down into 10 principles for evolving teams and organizations. And you can see how they nest here with clarify purpose and develop strategy at the center, going on out into the outer rings. And just at a high level, there are principles here around orientation for clarified purpose to ensure that everyone understands who the organization or team is serving, why and to what end, so that everybody is able to focus and unite their efforts on achieving that purpose. And then there's principles around developing strategy, develop a strategy to guide value creation so that everyone shares a common direction and strategy is adapted as necessary to achieve the purpose. And that's really at the very central core of all of these patterns. And then they have a whole section of things around navigation. So focusing on value allows people to focus on their daily work, on the value delivery, so that the stuff that needs doing to achieve your purpose is done. Running experiments is a key part of sociocracy. So running experiments to address complex challenges so that you learn how to move closer to where you want to be. We operate in a complex, uncertain, volatile, and ambiguous space, if you know the VUCA acronym, and experiments are a great way to navigate that space. So you can make a hypothesis, test it, and validate that and move forward based on the results of that. And this framework really embraces that kind of methodology. And then the third one is sense and respond. So it's identify, prioritize, and respond to impediments and opportunities so that we can adapt or pivot as necessary and improve where we can. Another set of stuff that kind of holds all of that together are the structure patterns. So really enabling autonomy frees individuals and teams to create value as autonomously as possible so that you can deliver value fast and avoid unnecessary dependencies. And then where those dependencies actually exist, then you collaborate on those dependencies. So you co-create and evolve a coherent system to deal with all dependencies so that you can deliver value fast when dependencies cannot be avoided. And then the last circle, is that the last one? Yeah, is around transformation. And these three areas encompass a number of patterns that one is invest in learning and support everyone in developing their competence and skills so that their contribution remains valuable and the organization can evolve. Intentionally develop culture is collaborate on fostering a cooperative culture where everyone can achieve their fuller potential so that you can build and maintain an engaging and productive work environment. And then the last one is building shared mental models. So invest in building shared mental models so that everyone can engage in meaningful dialogue about what's happening and what needs to be done. So these are really the high level kind of ways of getting into these patterns. And each one of these contains a bunch of patterns within them inside of S3. And there's this whole document that kind of maps them out. But what we wanted to talk about today is really around principle 9 about intentionally developing culture. And in this principle, there's some essential patterns that they've mapped out that contribute to this. Artful participation, agree on values, evaluate and involve agreements, and stuff like that. But today we're going to focus on agree on values. That's kind of a core bit that we wanted to really look at today. So in the practical guide, and we'll share all these links in a sec, it really talks about this pattern called agree on values. And this is really to intentionally evolve the culture in your organization. Values are valued principles that guide behavior. Values define scope for action and ethical constraints. Each member brings their own values to an organization based on personal experiences and beliefs. A team or organization may choose to collectively adapt values to guide their collaboration. And really, the really key reason for me why this is important is values offer guidance to determine appropriate action, even in the absence of explicit agreements. So it acts as kind of a safety net that says this is the space and values we agree to work under. If we don't have an explicit agreement, at least we know that these values are being upheld. And then collectively adapting a set of values supports the effectiveness of an organization. It reduces potential for misunderstanding, helps align decision-making and action, and attracts new members, partners, customers who are aligned with the organization. And then, as always, in all things in S3, chosen values are an agreement that benefits from regular review. So nothing is set in stone. Things are always good enough for now, safe enough to try. And if we learn something different in the future, we can modify it as we go through conversation and consent. So that's kind of the introduction to the Sociocracy 3.0 stuff that we're bringing here today to kind of act as the framework of our conversation. And then the specific context of what we want to talk about today are agree on values. When we think about the Cardano Constitution and the Cardano culture, what are those values that are most important to you here in the room? And we hope to go through an exercise to kind of capture those, cluster them, sort them out, and kind of come out on the other side with a set of values that we all agree are important. So that's kind of our goal today, is to really surface that. I see Randall has his hand up. Do you have something you want to contribute, Randall, before we jump in?
Yeah, I just want to chain on to what you just said. In the last couple of weeks, Odin's presentations here have been a little bit more about talking about S3. And I'm really stoked for this particular call because instead of talking about S3, we're actually digging into the creation of value by digging into the values that we agree on. So rather than talking about agreeing on values, let's just find some values together.
Mm-hmm. That's why we're here today. Thanks, Randall. Absolutely. So jumping into that, we've prepared a Miro board, and we're going to do a little bit of brainstorming here around what values you think are important. And once we do those and have a little bit of a conversation around why you pick those and why they're important to you personally, we'll go into a grouping exercise and see if we can cluster them into concrete clusters. And then whatever evolves from that, we'll go in and have a discussion around that and hopefully come out today with a set of values that people are really passionate about. And we can find these groupings that we kind of either all agree upon or have at least a really great conversation around them. And so to kick things off, why don't have we shared the link to the Miro board in chat? I'm sorry, I'm working on a laptop, so I can't see chat and everything else that's going on at the same time. So yeah, if you are here and have the ability to do so, definitely jump into the mural board here. I'll drop the link again into chat. Um, and then we're just going to look at this first area called values brainstorming, and really come in here and grab a sticky. And if you want to drop your name in here, you can put your name in to the text box and then type in, and it can be a short word, it can be a sentence, whatever is comfortable to you. But if you want to start populating this and put in a value, like I'll put in transparency. And we'll spend maybe 5 minutes just to collectively brainstorm values that you think are important to go into the Constitution. And then we'll have a short session where we kind of talk about them. Is there any questions on what we want to do right now? Randall, is your hand still up from last time? Or did you want to add something?
I just forgot to lower it.
Okay. Then
I'll also add, if anybody's having trouble using the Miro board, you can drop stuff in the chat and we'll get it transferred over.
Yeah, absolutely. If you aren't able to use Miro, feel free to drop it in chat, or even come off mute and just let us know what your values are, and we have people here who will add a card for you. But I'm going to set a timer. I don't seem to be able to access apps here, so I'm going to set one on my phone for 5 minutes, and then we're off.
Man, I love to see a busy Miro board, like a swarm of bees swarming around on it. I love it.
And for those that are watching this video later and can't see the room, I'm just making a note that the swarm of bees is comprised of 17 different people who are in this breakout room today working on this.
Hey, thank you. I can use the mirror board, but I've dropped my name and the values that I would like to contribute.
Okay, thanks, Abdul. We have about a minute left. If anybody needs more time, just let me know. All right, we're at 5 minutes. Feel free to flesh out any last minute thoughts you have. Looks like we have a lot of great stickies up here. So now we're gonna go into part of this where we just have an opportunity to share what we put. And if anybody has any questions on what anybody wrote down and really have any clarifying questions to understand what that word or sentence means, it's a great time to ask that as well. We don't want to really discuss the words yet. We'll have time for that after this, but we just want to kind of get out there to make sure everyone understands what everyone has put out, and have some space to share. And I am going to, just so that everyone has an opportunity, we're going to use one of the S3 principles called rounds, which allow everybody to come out and talk about what they put up. If you have nothing to say and you don't want to share anything, that's perfectly great too, because your words may be completely apparent. And if you don't have anything to share, just say pass or indicate in chat that you're passing. But I'd love to just go around my screen and maybe start with Randall. Can you talk about your stickies really quickly? And then if anybody has any questions as Randall is sharing, just raise your hand. And then we'll go to Solomon after that.
I'm really interested in what can go wrong and how we can surface principles to address that. And beyond that, I'll pass.
All right. Did you have stickies up here that we can look at and maybe ask questions if we have any?
Glad to answer questions. I'll pass.
You'll pass. Okay. Solomon, and then we'll go to John. And feel free to drop into chat if you can't come off mute to explain things. All right, we'll move on. John, what are your values that you put up? And maybe give a few words to why you put those up. And then we'll go to Jeremy after that. Okay, looks like John's only on chat. He can answer any questions here. I see he put up transparency, accountability, movement change shall not get stuck in the past, and truth. Great values. All right, go to Jeremy and then Jeff.
The one I would call out on my choices there, I see I've got a lot of overlap with others in decentralization, adaptability. I did include usefulness, and I saw overlap in a couple places with that as well. But I would say the most important one is the can be mended. There's no chance we get the first constitution right. We should be able to see a like a healing ability. The community should be able to heal the Constitution at every stage of its life cycle, at every stage of its existence. That's really important to me.
Thanks, Jeremy. Oh man, my chat order just changed. It keeps changing. I'm not sure who's next, but Jeff and then Harsha. Okay, Jeff can't unmute, but he did add a few words. Let me see if I can find Jeff's thing. Bottom left. So here it is, transparency and social good. For transparency, there's all data conversations, rationale for decisions are available for posterity, and for social good, fundamentally helpful to humanity. Great. Thanks for that. And then Harsha, and then Eduardo.
For me, it was mostly about accessibility. Like, we have the Constitution, we have all these discussions. In a lot of cases, like we do not have access to it. We do not know the discussions. So like dissipation of the information is pretty important. And also representation, like if there are individual needs and a small group or one person's needs are bigger than like a larger number of smaller people's needs, then I feel like that'd be a problem. So those are the main ones.
Awesome. Thanks, Harsha. Eduardo, and then Bernard.
In my case, I put trust, trust based in facts, and the compromise. Because if we agree with something, we need to follow this agreement. Because I believe in the freedom, and each people have the freedom to accept or don't accept the compromise. But after accept the compromise, it's because the people have the freedom to make a choice. And in certain way, I feel that we need to respect and gratitude. If the compromise have a great a positive impact, I think that we need to have a sense of gratitude for the contribution of some people or some group.
All right. Great, thank you, Eduardo. Any questions, comments? If not, we'll go to Bernard and then to Simon.
Thank you very much. Greetings, everybody. I have looked at it in this way, in two ways. Number one, on Cardano, me as a member, not as a leader of some sort. What I've always experienced is sometimes transparency is very important. And me also, I need to be committed. If I'm a member of Cardano community, I have got a responsibility not to be passive, but to be active. So that commitment from members, even if we are from different countries online, we should just be committed. That commitment is very important. Otherwise, it's a dead community. It only comes when there is money. When there is no money, people will disappear. Right. The next point is individual participation. I believe even if I don't have money, I have something to add to build the Cardano community. That is always what I have done. That is what I always expect everyone who calls himself or herself a member. So the Constitution is a guide. It's there to somehow equalize, regulate our behavior, but individual participation is very important. Next is a consensus breakthrough. We are going to have deadlocks. We are going to have pressure groups from left and right. But how do we effectively break through and make agreements that satisfy at least the majority. By majority, I mean at least 51% of people must be happy. If you see in any organization or governance, if 51% of the people are not happy, then something is wrong. Then inclusivity. We are from different cultures, diverse backgrounds, continents. We all have got different resources. So inclusivity is taking into account that there are some people who do not have some kind of resources, this and this. So alternative means of them to communicate is very important. Sometimes I find myself struggling with a lot of people who are attending Cardano summits and events. But the applications we are required to use, for example, the my robot, and it's not an option, it's a compulsory. Then people are using the phones to attend our meetings and this. So this excludes them completely out despite their interest, despite their love for Cardano. And then diversity again. I have a feeling that sometimes diversity is said, but it's not practiced. We have got women. Sometimes I don't know if they really feel we really accommodate them. So we are diverse, we are from different genders. And if you look at the population of women, it is very low. No one seems to give it an effort to say, really, let us look into it also and accommodate and make women feel at home. Rather than if everything is technical, is for technical people, then definitely some people from diverse backgrounds are going to feel left out. Even if it's not explicitly said, then they will drop out. Then the last one is fairness. Well, wherever I have seen where there is no fairness, I've emotionally come out and expressed my emotions out. But at the same time, I request everyone who I live with, if they find I am not fair, could be I'm not doing it on purpose, they must communicate so that at least everyone feels, okay, this one, there is fairness here. So these are basically the values that I have seen are very essential for governance, whether it's on chain or it's not on chain. Thank you.
Thanks, Bernard. Great principles there. Next, we'll go to Simon, and then after that, Don Bosco.
Yeah. So honesty and trust, I think, and the self-explanatory, maybe not so applicable to the Constitution, but decentralization is, I think. I mean, it's one of the core values of blockchain, in my opinion. Democracy. Right now, we don't have a democratic system, and I think that would definitely be like, if you look at history, democracy was definitely an advancement for humanity, and I would like to see that advancement in Cardano as well, and I think that could be something that goes into the Constitution as well. Sustainability. Yeah, not just in case in a way of being able to sustain our efforts here, but doing it hopefully better than we do in our current systems, because if I look at our world right now, it's not very sustainable. Smart change. Don't change your positions all the time, of course, but when you change it with conviction and yeah, just be smart about it. Strength. I'm not talking about physical strength here, obviously. Just be strong in your mind, being disciplined, and well, to be honest, maybe also not so much for the Constitution, but for us, as individuals, but I think it's important. Sensitive and sensible. Being sensitive to issues like, as Bernard said, equality and all those cultural issues that we have in our society, but also be sensible. And this also, I think, ties a little bit into the S3, good enough for now, safe enough to try. That could be a thing that could be interesting for the Constitution, in my opinion. Service. So don't be all about yourself. Of course, don't forget yourself, but I think giving to people is important. And yeah, karma to me is not a spiritual thing. I think it's like about statistics. If you give to your surroundings good things, then good things will come back. It's just like if you do it 100 times, then maybe 10 times it will come back, or 20 times it will come back, right? So that's how I see it, at least. And yeah, stability. I leave that to your imagination. I was talking enough. Thank you.
Thanks, Simon. Don Bosco.
Hello.
Yeah.
I hope you are all well. I haven't populated any of my sticky notes on the same because most of my concerns resonate with what Bernard has already spoken about. I do not want to repeat the same things, especially on the fairness section and inclusivity, especially with the women's side. Sorry about that. Especially in African case, we have the issues with minority and also the women not being interested in, especially governance and anything to do with how things are evolving around. So if we try to include these the minority group, they may be small, but you'll find that it adds up, especially in Kenya and places which they don't have a lot of access to internet and other things. If you can get to reach and hear their voices, if we can get to see what the common person thinks about the revolution, that thinks about them, and also educate them at the same time, this will enable for them to be interested in doing or participating in things that will be affecting Cardano positively. And also the other section. My only concern is that I didn't understand what there is concern on security and privacy. I'm not sure what it's to be stipulated on security and privacy, but the whole idea about decentralization is for the security and privacy thing. So I'm trying to see what exactly do they mean by security and privacy.
All right. Thanks for sharing. Those are probably really good conversation topics around security and privacy. So we'll bring that up. That gets to the list. Did I miss anybody? The list kept changing a little bit, so I might have skipped over somebody.
Yes, you miss me.
Oh, Abdul, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much for this session. I mentioned 3 things, which are transparency, community oversight, and humanity first. So in the case of transparency, it is important that as a community, we ensure transparency so that a lot of things that need to be explained, be pro-event or pro-action, will have been avoided if there is a clear communication in the first place, or we are transparent in whatever it is that we are doing. So regarding the humanity first, someone like me, I've always wished that every human being in this entire world should be equal. But then the commandment of God as a believer might possibly not meet that happens. But to some extent, what we are trying to foster decentralization. So I think we should put humanity first in whatever decision we are making. either technologically or in a societal manner. So we take humanity first. Like we should consider humanity. Like whatever that happens to me, if it was happen to other person, would it be of good use? Or okay, if I should see the next person to me to be in a good manner, will I be happy with that? Or perhaps whatever that we want to bring into the system through this constitution to think of the humanity. Then the community oversight, it's more like having a feedback from people about how things are done. Maybe, and I love Cardano with this, for this rather. As a community-driven initiatives, it has been really well, but more of it will be very, very needed. As much that there are a lot of stuff that are still not seen yet really okay as far as community oversight is concerned. So I wouldn't want to be mentioning names, but or entities, but it is important that we have this as part of our things that will be included in the constitution as a very core value. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Was there anybody else who was missed who wants to contribute their thoughts on values that they feel should be considered?
I kind of missed everything. I'd like to share some. I just don't know.
Sure.
You probably don't. You probably, if you have time to tell me, then I could.
Yeah, no.
could-
Feel free to jump in and share some, and we could write them down as you go. So what values would you like to see in the Constitution, Robert?
Oh, that's weird. Oh, that's good because I've been actually wanting to. Just I guess bringing your personal values, your personal. Well, I'd have to read intersect more. Just to get I guess the values, just to get a little bit more involved. It's kind of a wide. It's kind of a wide subject, governance, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think just the value would be long-term planning for Cardano, since it's going to be, the goal is for it to be around forever, just, I guess, basing your projects on value for the ecosystem, I guess, and kind of the good for the ecosystem instead of, it kind of helps your projects because you're not just trying to get funding or just do something just to develop something. You're actually developing something on top of an existing architecture or something that helps technologically changes, upgrades and systems, different things that Cardano could use and technology, whatever, building on top of TCP/IP or whatever, a basic, just basic legacy system stuff, and just, I don't just, building what everybody's doing, everybody that builds stuff. That's kind of what I've been experiencing lately, the information technology part. And yeah, thanks for asking. That's glad I got to share a little.
All right. Thanks for adding some of those thoughts. We've put them down on a couple of stickies here.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. And was there anybody else who wanted to contribute anything that hasn't had a chance? Okay. So kind of the next exercise we wanted to do was to take all of these great values that people have contributed and just kind of go into here and start to sort them into what you think might be logical groups. And we're going to kind of do a fun exercise right now where we're going to do this all together on the Miro board together at the same time without talking. So it's called the silent sort. So just look at all the values here, and if you see two that are related to each other or mean the same thing, feel free to group them. And then we'll see what emerges from this. Eduardo, do you have a question?
It's not a question. It's like, for example, I put true and facts, and for me it's connect with trust that John writes.
Yeah.
It's like in the top, to building trust, you need the true and the facts. And for me, it's connect trust with true and facts.
Right. So that's a great example. So if you think that that's the case, then we would want to combine those stickies close to each other. And there may be multiple different groupings that people think. And kind of the exercise for the next 5 minutes is really just to do that silently and see what emerges from the group. And if you have, and you're not able to group things because you don't have access to Miro or whatever, just put it into chat what you think. And I just moved truth, facts, and truth together here. But so I see we've copied the values over to the next board over. So please go to the grouping values section of the Miro board and start grouping things in here. And we'll spend 5 minutes doing that, and we'll see what emerges, and then we'll do another round just to see what we're going to call those categories. So resist the temptation to add a sticky to name the piles. We'll do that in a sec as a group, but just create the piles of things that are related to each other. And if somebody takes a sticky that you just moved and moves it to a different pile, that's an indirect form of communication. So think about what they're doing and why they might be doing that. And if you still think that your pile makes more sense, feel free to drag it back. And hopefully eventually these kind of changes will start to slow down and coalesce into stuff. But that's part of the fun part of this is you can either jump onto what you think someone else is trying to get to, or you can try to silently create a new idea that you think is more relevant.
How much time do we got, Nori?
We've got 4 minutes left. And if we need more time, just let me know and I can increase the time.
I can't see the board. I wonder what I'm doing wrong here. I can't see actually anything.
Do you have, hold on.
I
Let me
must have
grab
not. Yeah, I didn't do something.
We're all working here in this Miro board. So if you want to click on that in chat, it'll take you to the board we're working on. And just to orient, there are 3 panels in there and we're working in the middle grouping values panel. And just for this one, I see somebody working in the first panel. So I just locked it just so that we all work on the middle panel where all the stickies were copied. No worries. I just wanted to make sure that we're all working in the same grouping.
It's copy. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a copy over there.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no worries.
It's the first time I work with this application.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, no worries at all.
Puta. Ia trabalhar.
Cansa, mas faz parte. Sozinho na rua, vinha arrastando.
Feel free to make the piles more clear. One of our goals here is to kind of group these ideas into kind of coherent areas. We have about a minute left.
Is someone trying to make all of these big, or
I think they're trying to read what's too small to read otherwise.
okay?
Yeah. That's what I think's going on there.
Zoom has or Miro has a zoom feature, so you can also scroll in if it's hard to read things. All right. How are things falling out?
I think I see some groupings here. I see some patterns.
Yeah. All right.
Yep.
Awesome. Why don't we jump into that next part then? Why don't we have a quick open conversation of what people are seeing and what you were thinking as the sorting was happening and the grouping. What patterns kind of pop out for you? And what are some of the higher level groupings that you kind of see here? Maybe we can start with just a popcorn, if you've got
Yeah,
one.
I was kind of arranging. I was looking around for ones that I thought were like oriented around having voice in an ecosystem, individual autonomy, and I noticed they kept getting pulled away. And I saw one, that upper area, the way that kind of comes together is like that same thing I was working towards. And so it feels like what kind of action, like how enabled is a community? So like kind of getting a step above individual autonomy and voice, which I do also see that grouping in there as well. It reformed. But then also thinking like how are communities supported, how are communities treated? And then there's that true facts, truth area, which got a bunch of transparency cards thrown into it. That for a minute there was starting to look like how people treat each other in the ecosystems, almost like ethical constraints, which I thought was interesting when that started coming together. I'm not sure it did move, and I'm not sure where it moved to, but for a second there was looking like a real solid category.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, Jeremy. Any other thoughts that people had as groups were being made here?
Yeah, I feel like the groups are sometimes like borderless. There's always something that relates to something from another group, even though they both kind of belong to those two specific groups that have formed, like inclusivity, and we have over there decentralization, or yeah, that's the one that really sprung out for me. But there have been a couple others.
Mm. And how about this grouping here around grassroots, community oversight, privacy initiative, privacy's a couple of times, security. Is that the decentralization bit that you were talking about?
Oh yeah, that's also one. Like
Oh yeah.
privacy and decentralization. I don't know if they're so connected, but then grassroots and decentralization makes sense. Maybe we can disconnect those couple here. What do you think?
Yeah. And if something maps to multiple groups, it's easy enough to copy the sticky to both just to represent that kind of idea. Nice. Looks like we have one here for social good, transparency, privacy,
Would you
security.
want to put long-term planning?
That's a good question. What do people think?
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Where would we put long-term planning, into which group?
In certain sense, long-term planning for Cardano, it's the base of the project. And this is why we have this decentralized infrastructure and power. Because
Mhm.
Yeah, it feels like it's close to things like usefulness and adaptability and things like that. So I think I think it slid up there close to where it goes.
and in certain sense, the Cardano treasury have the goal to this long-term sustainability. Sorry by the words, but
Mhm.
but of course, if it's necessary to put in bold the long-term planning, I agree, because in certain sense today the people don't have this long-term view even for their own lives. Most of the people thinking what's happened in the next week, and for many people it's difficult to thinking like 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. And maybe it's for some people it's easy to understand that the life is long. Maybe to put in bold what's try to planning the life in a long journey. And of course this is the base of the blockchain.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense there. One, two, three. So it looks like we have about 5 or 6 categories kind of emerging here. That enables us to kind of talk about specific categories and stuff. That's awesome. And then the last part of this meeting is really just going into a bit more free-form discussion around these groups. Like, yeah, what do you all think about them? What's important? How do we communicate some of this back out to the larger community when we get into the constitutional workshops that we should be talking about and thinking about? Because that's the ultimate goal of today, is really to get your opinions on what's important to consider when we talk about the Constitution. And I want to welcome Joe to the space. I see that you've joined us. Just to pause a bit and get some feedback, do you think it's important that we come up with concrete namings for these categories or groupings? Or is it good enough
I don't
to look
think,
at the piles?
yeah, it's good enough. I don't think we need to name the clusters. They're still kind of flexing and forming a little bit. The more interesting thing is how they are different from each other right now. What's kind of the core in each one.
Okay, so let's open it up for just a discussion on there for the last 15 minutes or so. What do you all think about these clusters and what they stand for, how they interrelate?
I feel like they set us up to ask good questions about what we're seeing in the Constitution. They're robust enough groups that even if you're not seeing one thing, like one value in particular reflected in the Constitution, you might see others in the group reflected, and that could lend itself to better clarifying language and things like that, like identifying where the constitutional language is going to be less clear or even contradictory to itself. I think that'll be some use that will come out of something like this.
The key thing that comes up for me when I look at this is the differences between the groups suggest that there's maybe some question about what's the Constitution for? Is it for the propeller heads? Is it for everyone except the propeller heads? Is it for social elements, or is it really about chain governance? What's the purpose?
Yeah, riffing off that a little bit, I know in the preamble of the interim constitution, they basically say we're going to bite off a big bite here because we're going to try to govern an ecosystem. So they're definitely getting one level at least above chain governance. And then the question is, what's an ecosystem? What are its boundaries? What are its limits? What's in the ecosystem? What's out of the ecosystem?
What's out? Yeah. I see gears turning, Don Bosco. What you thinking?
Considering the alignment for the one which you've been using to cluster them, is there any general wordings which can come up with instead of having them all over the place? Because the ones which don't have that much of a cluster can also be considered to have a cluster. Do you think that is a feasible solution to all the SDKs that we have?
Okay. You're,
I can't hear the speaker clearly. I don't know, maybe it is only me.
yeah, I think your audio cut out a little bit. It was hard to hear what you just said.
Okay, I want to say something regarding the groups as they are connecting. Actually, what I want to say about the community is about the community oversight as far as the constitution is concerned. The workshop has been like currently there are 50 approved workshops by Intersect. And then talking about community oversight, I want to believe that this might not go a long way to reach a larger audience. I want to say if there should be any kind of opportunity to help people with the material or resource necessary for organizing the workshops, even though they're not approved by the Intersect, or let me say they are not funded by the Intersect, because there are a lot of people that have been showing interest in this. And they're talking of the community oversight. So if Intersect fail to allow people of interest to organize the workshop and to be provided the material needed, so that might be seems to a kind of a gatekeeping that is not necessarily needed in a decentralized ecosystem. So I believe if a large amount of people get access to the constitution, that we have a lot of feedback that will assist us for a long time in the Cardano ecosystem. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a really good point. Like making those materials widely available, allowing people to grassroots, bring people together to talk about it and contribute back, I think is very important.
I think that's the same idea of inclusivity, or trying to get the minority into the action. The only idea is that our proposals that I maybe have is how does this information reach the specific target groups for them to be able to speak up?
Mm-hmm. Eduardo, your hand is up.
In certain sense, this constitution will have impact in the catalyst governance, and it's the main focus. It's like to make a constitution for the projects and the governance of the catalysts, because today we have like, okay, we have Cardano improvement proposal. This is the base for the sustainable development, the future development of the technology of the Cardano. And the other part, it's the catalyst, and maybe the third step, it's the management of the treasury, the Cardano treasury. For example, the fee, 20% of the fees and the rewards go again to the treasury. The constitutions try to open the doors for the community to decide, for example, okay, not 20%, only 50%, for example, and go to the vote or something like that. What are the limits? Because maybe when we thinking in the country, it's the big law that control another laws, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, in the constitution, it needs to stay the systems of voting for example, for the catalyst.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Like, what is the democratic process for voting? And really understanding the scope of the Constitution too. Like my understanding is it's not for Catalyst per se, but for the rest of the Cardano, the larger ecosystem. So looking at SIP 1694, we're talking about treasury disbursements. We're looking at parameter changes and other things. And Catalyst is just the innovation fund within this whole ecosystem. And Catalyst itself may have a completely different governance mechanism inside on how to distribute the funds that it stewards. But at some point, all of the Cardano Constitution will inform how much money Catalyst gets to manage or to steward and other things, as well as Intersect itself. Like Intersect will need to go through the constitutional process to get a budget approved, and it will say we're going to do all of these things, and then we all get to vote on that. And I think also the whole DREP layer, so that we're able to delegate our votes to somebody we feel has more context or information than we do to make the right decisions. All that kind of stuff is part of this constitutional question. And I think it's really interesting that we're building something from the ground up that is global. We're trying to make it fair and inclusive. And these are all great things that we need to make sure we get in there so everyone has a voice. And
allowing space for merit to hold weight is the way I phrased what you said there, Nori. And it's interesting because there can be a sense of conflict between people who may not have like a appropriate amount of reputation to be able to affect something that they feel strongly about. It's an interesting problem space.
Mm-hmm. And I do want to recognize that we have a member of the interim constitutional committee here in this room. I don't know if Joe, you wanted to talk anything at all about your role there, and or any of the others here that are participating in the interim governance of the chain.
Another thing comes to mind.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, checking the social good aspect of the value. I have this kind of thought that let me see the humanity first that has been mentioned. There is this thing regarding should I say social inequality in the ecosystem. How do I say this? I was in the meeting, or let me say, yeah, I was in the meeting in the Africa Catalyst Town Hall. I forgot the name that the somebody said she could not participate in the voting process due to the threshold of 500 aid that required to register to participate in the voting. So that is quite what I regarded as a social inequality, whereby many people who want their voices to be heard fail to do so. So I don't know, maybe in the, like you mentioned now, that project catalysts will have their own inner governance separate from the entire governance structure.